The Philadelphia Flyers made a surprise return to the Stanley Cup Playoffs in 2026. They finished third in the Metropolitan Division, and it was their first berth since the bubble in 2020, and prior to that, they had not been in the playoffs since 2018. They beat Pittsburgh in 6 games before getting swept out by Carolina in round number 2. But Neil, I could see clearly this team taking the next step, and they were helped by a terrific run of 18-6-1 in the final 25 to get in the playoffs.
This is a team that nobody expected to get in the playoffs, and I'm not even sure that the Philadelphia Flyers management wanted to get into the playoffs at some points. They like to just be building it slowly. But Owen Tippett and others who had great seasons said, no, we want to get in this year. And they surely did. And they had some really good highlights this season that we're going to go over.
Actually, when I went back and I listened to our summer coolers, you had specifically said that it would be possible for this team to contend for a wild card position because the Metro wasn't overly strong once we got through the top tier teams, and a couple of them didn't even make the playoffs, being New Jersey and Washington, Carolina obviously being strong, but that they could be within a group of several teams and could be the one to emerge. And the question that you had, could Rick Tocchet get them to overachieve? Because we saw this team has good pieces in place, and they did so before the season started with Tippett, as you'd mentioned, Tyson Foerster, Noah Cates, Jamie Drysdale, and Cam York. That was the youth. And then you put in the veterans such as Captain Sean Couturier, Travis Konecny, and Travis Sanheim. And in the offseason last year, they added Trevor Zegras, Christian Dvorak, and Dan Vladař. So you look at that, and that was a pretty good group to say, you know what? If things fall into place, they could take that next step, which indeed they did.
They did, and Tocchet did a good job in Philadelphia. There's no doubt about that, because this is a results-driven business, and he got the results. Zegras, coming out of Anaheim, had a new life, became a new player with the Philadelphia Flyers, without a doubt. You know, the Michigan goal might have been the worst thing that ever happened to him, as you have said before. And they signed Dan Vladař, who played last year in Calgary, and he did a good job for them this season, and in the playoffs especially. So, as you said, good pieces in place. Unfortunately, Owen Tippett got hurt after the first round, didn't play in that second round against Carolina, the sweep. I think that really hurt them because Tippett is one of their very best players on the team. Tippett, by the way, is a player that they got from Florida when they traded Giroux there. So sometime now you can understand when you see them trading a player and you get a future young player and you go, oh, well, is he ever going to be any good? Owen Tippett's pretty good reward for trading away your captain.
So I think when we take the sum of the parts here and we look at what we expected for them, they were right there, of course, qualifying at the end. But the reality is, on the morning of February 26th, they were 4 games over 500, 8th place in the wild card, and 8 points out of the second wild card position. And as I mentioned, they finished 18-6-1 with a handful of 5-game winning streaks to qualify. And Neil, I think as this streak went on, we saw this team really take on an identity because they became very difficult to play against in all 3 zones of the ice. They were hard on the forecheck. Their gaps were really good. And it took maybe 2/3, 3/4 of the season for it to really click in. But it was apparent that by the end of the regular season, they had fully bought in to what Rick Tocchet was selling.
And for those of us that remember watching hockey in the 70s, this is a Philadelphia Flyer identity. They assumed the rough and tough, you're going to pay a price to beat us type of mentality, and that's what this group has. Tocchet, of course, was part of those later Philadelphia teams that had that mentality. And sometimes when you go in there and you see that uniform, you see that logo, you think, oh boy, we're in for a tough night. No matter who's in those jerseys, It's just that's the way it has been perceived. And I think Philadelphia obviously did a great job to get into the playoffs. They proved that they could knock out some of the greatest the game has ever seen in Sidney Crosby and Evgeni Malkin and Kris Letang and Karlsson. They knocked them out in the first round and then went on to play against a very formidable Carolina team that's just really, really good. But you know what? It was a successful year for the Flyers. A lot of progress made and a good coaching job by Rick Tocchet.
I think there were some other things that also factored into this. Dan Vladař, you'd mentioned before, coming over as a free agent and emerging as the clear number one. And we know that goaltending in Philadelphia has been a problem, not only for years, but decades. Sam Ersson was the backup, and Ivan Fedotov, who I think the organization had some hopes for, wound up getting traded to Columbus in mid-September of 2025. They were also without Rasmus Ristolainen for the better part of the first half of the season. He didn't play till December the 16th, coming off right tricep surgery. They also got a great shot of youth down the stretch with Porter Martone joining the lineup, and he had 10 points in 9 games. There are a couple of negatives here also with this team. The power play, which was 32nd, 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 30th last year, so we're talking about the past 4 years, actually managed to finish last again in 25-26. And then there's this ongoing kind of quirky relationship going on between Rick Tocchet and Matvei Michkov, and Michkov was sat twice during the course of the playoffs, and Michkov's going to become an RFA next year. It'll be very interesting to see if these guys can get on the same page going forward.
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you something that I think Danny Briere and Keith Jones made a mistake with Michkov when they brought him in and made him like a hero coming in, a conquering hero. They went and picked him up at the airport. They had video of it. Danny Briere, the general manager, was carrying this kid's bag for him. They made him come in and think that he's going to be the savior. And, you know, Tortorella didn't particularly like the way he played, and either does Tocchet. And I have a feeling that this is a guy that has his own mind and he's going to play the way he wants to play. And he doesn't necessarily listen to the coach all the time and what the coach wants. And there's no better way to end up in the press box than not listening to what the coach wants. You'll end up there eating popcorn with your buddies. So I think that happened to Michkov. It's going to be interesting what his future is going to bring. They don't have enough youth to dispense with Michkov to trade him away. But I got to tell you, he's one more year away from them thinking about doing that, because he's going to demand a big contract like they all do. And if they deem that he doesn't have the personality to do well in the NHL on the Philadelphia Flyers, look for a move there. But I think you're a year away from that.
So let's take a deeper look into what is ahead for this team. The offense is still done by committee. And even though Owen Tippett has been a consistent high 20s goal scorer, this team has no game breaker. And for the second straight year, they were without a 30-goal scorer. I do believe this youth pipeline is good, but I think, as you pointed out, it is still not fully developed. We mentioned the players earlier, and we mentioned Porter Martone. Denver Barkey and Alex Bump had some good impact this year, and next up should be Nikita Grebenkin up front, along with Jett Luchanko, as well as defenseman Oliver Bonk. The team has only 5 picks in the 2026 draft, none in the 4th round. They gave that up to Anaheim as part of the acquisition of Zegras, none in the 5th round. That was sent to Colorado as part of the Sean Walker, Ryan Johansson trade. Walker is in Carolina now, and Johansson currently has no NHL contract. The team does have over $7 million in cap space, and this is before the July 1st reset. Their UFAs, Carl Grundström, Rodrigo Ābols, and Luke Glendening up front, Noah Juulsen on defense, and the RFAs, the aforementioned Zegras and Grebenkin up front, along with Jamie Drysdale and Emil Andrae on defense, and Sam Ersson in goal. So I think there's a lot to work with here for Jones and Briere. From your GM perch, where do you see this heading?
Well, again, and I'll say like I've done with the other teams when we've done these spring cleanings, they've got to get to work on signing Zegras, Jamie Drysdale. That would be my top two that you want to get signed. I don't know what they feel about those UFAs, if any of them they're concerned about. Obviously, you're going to be concerned about the draft. You want to keep the youth coming in. You want to make sure or do as best you can to make sure you get the best picks possible on your selections. And I would think with 7.1 in cap space, look for the Flyers to sign a named player to come in. And when I say a named player, I don't mean an older guy, but I mean somebody that's out there that they think can improve their team. There's no reason not to sign in Philadelphia. That's not a place that people want to avoid, don't want to go. That's a very proud franchise. And so I would expect them to sign at least one named free agent.
Suddenly that market has become very, very attractive.